All right, so I'm going to show you how to reassemble an axle on a Dana 44 rear end on a Jeep Wrangler. Probably the same for multiple applications, but there's a few things you want to do and you want to keep paying attention to. One of those things is going to be the placement of your ring. Okay, so first you want to put your retainer plate on. Then once you have your retainer plate on, if you have a Teralo disc brake conversion, you're going to need to put in this spacer ring. If you don't use this, it's not going to seat properly and you're going to have issues with your bearings down the road. So what you want to do is take your ring, slide that on after you put the plate on. Now, when it comes to the seal, you want to make sure that the cupped end goes towards the axle and the flat end goes out towards the wheel. Okay, before you put this on, you want to make sure that you grease this. So all you got to do is just rub a few dabs of grease in here, lube it up. You're just making sure that when you go and put this back on and the axle starts to turn, you're not going to tear up this seal and wear it out prematurely. So put a liberal amount on the seals. Ensuring that you got good coverage. Once you're satisfied with the amount of grease that you have on there, which I think I'm going to put a little bit more. And once you're satisfied with the amount of grease that you got on there, you can go ahead and slide it over the axle shaft. You want to also make sure that you keep this seal clean and you don't have any debris in here. Otherwise, it's going to tear it up prematurely as well. So remember, you want to put the coned or the cup side towards the differential, and then the flat side is going to go out towards your tire or your wheel. Okay, once you have that on, you're going to have your set 10 bearing. Okay, I recommend the Timken bearings, made in the USA. They're high quality. They last a lot longer than the cheap stuff. You know, yeah, you're going to pay $10, $15 more for a bearing, but you have that peace of mind. You're not going to have to redo this after about 50,000 miles or so long as you install this right. Now, if you look here, this part right here, you want this part to go out towards the wheel, and this part, which is your race, you want this part to go in towards the axle and the differential side. Okay, if you turn it in this way, you're going to install it wrong and you're going to be in a world full of hate. Okay. So make sure that you have this part down towards your wheel. So once you got that on there, you're ready to go take it over to the press and press it on. I recommend that you use an old cone from a previous bearing that you cut off. Reason being is you already have the slit in here from where you cut it. Okay, so that'll allow it to come off the axle without any hassle. So all you want to do is slide that on and allow that cone to touch the face of the other cone. This is going to protect your bearings and the cage inside of the race, okay? Because if you don't do this and you just press down on the race or the bearing surface itself, you're going to damage the rollers and you're going to damage the cage, okay? Now, included in your set 10 is you're going to have a bearing retainer, okay? Do not press this on at the same time that you're pressing on the bearing, okay? You won't get a good seat. So what you want to do is press your bearing on first, then install this, and then you're good to go, okay? So at this time, we're going to go ahead and take you over to the press. All right, so this is what we got to do now. Got to take your axle. You're going to take the cone, and you're going to slide your cone on the axle with the bearing, and then you're going to slide your axle assembly inside of your press, making sure you got it on the plates. Now, what you want to do is center the axle underneath your press. That way you get even load distribution while you're driving this bearing on, okay? Go ahead, bring the press down. Make sure we're straight on. And you're not going to be able to do this without a press. All right, now that I know that that's straight, I want to double check, make sure everything's in the right position. I've got my retainer, I got the spacer, and then I've got my seal, and then I've got the bearing in the right direction. Once you're satisfied with everything, then you can go ahead and drive the bearing onto the shaft. Once you get that bearing driven down onto the shaft, you're going to hear a slight change in the pitch of the bearing as it's going up. It's going to make like a little pop sound. When you hear that pop, that means it's seated. Okay. Now, once you're done driving the bearing on, you go ahead and raise your press up, and you're going to go ahead and you're going to get your axle prepared for the retainer. So you're going to slide your retainer on. It helps if you use the plate to hold it up, and then you're going to take your cone and you slide the cone back on. Okay. You'll go ahead, bring the two plates back together. And just like you did with the bearing, you're going to go ahead, line up your axle. Helps if you put a plate in here, just allows you to press evenly on the hub. And then go ahead and just make sure that you got good even contact with the plate. Make sure everything is even, and then once you're satisfied with that, you're going to drive the retainer on. Now the retainer is a little tighter tolerance than the bearing, so you want to make sure that you get it on and you get it started straight. All you got to do is drive it down, and then once you feel resistance and it stops, you go ahead and pull on the handle just a little bit more, just to make sure. Okay, so you're going to hear it popping, and then almost there, and then you'll feel your press get tight, and that's how you know you're done. Now the press I'm using is just a 20-ton press from Harbor Freight. It's nothing fancy. Definitely takes a little bit of time because you gotta manually pump it. There is an upgrade that you can do where you put a air over hydraulic bottle jack in there, and it makes it a lot quicker and it's a little more convenient. And that's something that I may upgrade to in the future. But once you have everything together, you can go ahead, take your axle, remove the cone, you don't need that anymore. Slide your plates out of the way, and then you can remove your axle from the press. And once you're done, you should have something that looks very similar to this. You should have your retaining ring on, your bearing, your seal. If you're running the teraflex disc brake conversion, you'll have this spacer ring, and then you'll have your retaining plate that goes on like so. if you don't install it this way and you make a mistake, you're going to have to cut the bearing off and replace it. So that can be a $50 mistake if you're not careful. So yeah, thanks for watching.